3, 2, 1.
Hi, this is Karen Atwood, Executive Director of Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Northeastern Iowa. I am here today to present you with some credit education, and with me is Cindy Stenifort, a certified credit counselor with Consumer Credit Counseling Services. In an effort to bring more information to the public, we at Consumer Credit present 2 educational programs each month on KBBG Radio. They're on the first and third Tuesday of each month from 10:30 to 11 a.m. on KBBG 88.1 on the FM dial. It is a call-in program, so feel free to call 234-1441 with your questions. The program is repeated at 7:30 p.m. Let me start by thanking Lou, Bev, Edie, and the KBBG team for allowing us this opportunity to be with you to help answer your credit and debt questions. Many of the people that we see at Consumer Credit would have been much better off had they come in to see us 6 months earlier. We're hoping that these radio educational programs will prompt you to make motions, get something done with regard to your money problems before it is too much. In America, we always tend to feel tomorrow will be a better day, and it should be. We also feel our money will stretch further, and it should. However, reality is that many times tomorrow isn't brighter, but it has a few more roadblocks, and the money that we thought we were going to have to stretch doesn't. So we want to talk about dealing with this. How do you deal with money not being there when you need it? We don't go from a very liquid situation with lots of money to bankruptcy overnight. This is always a slow process. And it's slow because we live day by day. We don't live a week at a time. And as each day goes by, our problem either gets worse or better a little at a time, but not enough we can really feel. But it's only when you sit down and you write down what you truly have, and not just part of it, but the whole picture, that you know what can be done. Call 234-1441 and ask questions or give opinions on credit topics related to debt repayment and bankruptcy. Many times when we can't pay for something, we grab a credit card to pay for it. Now, a way to get around credit cards being accumulated on us is to take the slip that you charged, mark a charge, or just put your Visa, circle that, and put it in a wallet or put it in an envelope at home so you know how much your bill is going to be when it comes in. If you haven't done that for a while, or you made a bunch of purchases, call the number on the back of your credit card and you will be given a place where you can find out what your total is on the credit card and what the charges were. This will help, and write them down so you know what to expect. Cindy, as you talk to people with regard to their credit cards, what are some of the things that you find?
Basically, they're using credit cards to make up the shortage that they have in a month. And that is just getting them deeper and deeper into a hole. So when we're looking at a delinquency basically on a credit report or a credit card, we encourage our clients to try to obviously pay more than the minimum amount due, because if you've ever noticed on your statement, there is always a box there that tells you if you pay the minimum payment, you're going to pay this much more in interest, and it'll take you this long to repay that. And we're talking years and thousands of dollars in additional interest, plus the original that you've got on the card anyway. So, but one other thing we ask is that, you know, is there any way they can increase their income by getting another job, taking in a boarder or a tenant, you know, even part-time work is something that will help them immensely. And if nothing else, selling some assets that they already have. But if they've tried credit counseling and it hasn't resolved the problem, then maybe it's time that they do make an appointment with a bankruptcy counselor. The bankruptcy laws were set up to provide individuals with financial difficulties a fresh start, and it is to be used as that, not just to escape making payments on debts that you can comfortably afford if you managed your money better. So the two most common types of bankruptcy are a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13. A Chapter 7 is basically a discharge or liquidating bankruptcy where you discharge your unsecured debt. A 13 is, it goes by a lot of different terminology, but most common is a wage earner plan or simply a repay plan. But one of the things that people have to remember when they file a Chapter 13 is that the arrearage that they owe their creditors goes into an actual plan that is overseen and paid by the trustee. You make a payment to the trustee, but what they don't consider is that once you file, beginning the following month, you have to make your regular payments to your creditors. So you're paying, a regular payment to the creditor and a sometimes prorated portion of the debt that you owe to the trustee for him to disperse to your creditor. One thing that we often try to bring up to clients if they own a home is to talk to their attorney about reaffirming that debt. When you reaffirm a mortgage debt, basically you're saying to that lender, yes, we filed bankruptcy, we have a discharge, but the original terms of the note and mortgage are still in effect. Now there's pros and cons to doing that, but a lot of times if you want to keep your home, you have to look at the long, the long-term ramifications, because if in the event that you do have something happen to you down the road, even if it's 5 years, 10 years, whatever, a lot of lenders will not even consider a workout option for you if you have not reaffirmed the debt when you filed bankruptcy previously. So it can be very beneficial to you, and it really, is something that you want to talk to your attorney about.
Many times in the past, we've talked about discipline, and we talked about habits. And before you can get to the point of filing bankruptcy, you need to know what your debt habits are. In other words, do you have a budget? Do you pay your bills? Do you wait until there's going to be a disconnect to pay them? Or do you pay them by the due date, or do you pay them before the due date? Those are important questions. Because if you do file bankruptcy and you haven't changed habits, I have news for you. You're going to be back in bankruptcy shape within 2 years. Not 10, but 2. Because once you start bad habits, and the second time around, they're not going to be real willing to listen to you. And all you're going to do is accumulate debt. Another thing that happens when you don't change those habits is relationships deteriorate. If it's your marriage, or if it is a friend relationship where you're living with someone, it won't take long before that person won't want to be any part of you. They may want to party with you, but that's the beginning and the end of it. And you need to watch out for how your debt is inherited. Are these just your debts, or are they joint debts? So you have to be very careful in how you set a budget and how you pay your bills. And you need to know what things you need to pay and what things are extras. A trip to a casino is an extra. That's not your necessary expense for the week or the month. Some people will say, well, I need my recreation. Well, you don't need recreation. You can lay on a couch and it doesn't cost you a dime. But if you must spend money on recreation, you are spending need money on a want. And these are things that, if you want to get out of a financial bind, you need to think about. You need to take into consideration. Another thing about bankruptcy, it should be your last resort. You should have gone through all of the other suggestions, all of the other, and you should spend a lot of time dwelling on this. Is this best? Will this resolve it? How will I behave later? With regard to the house, don't not pay the house payment for 3 months like any bankruptcy attorney will tell you about your other debts. Because they'll tell you, don't bother paying them, you're gonna charge them off in bankruptcy, and if you've paid them within the last 90 days, the judge is gonna consider that as part of your current debt. So your attorney will tell you not to pay. However, if you wanna keep the house, it's important to keep it current.
Yes, it is. Another thing, that if your income is non-garnishable, a lot of times we'll recommend that you may not want to file, because it is expensive to do so. And if it's just a matter of the creditors calling you, we would recommend that you seek legal aid to help send letters to creditors to cease and desist the phone calls. And what you mentioned about the type of debt that you have also, if it's like medical debt that was incurred while you're married to your spouse, you are equally liable for that. Now, some providers, like doctor's office, may make you pay in advance for future services if you do file bankruptcy and discharge those debts. Now, if it's a publicly owned clinic or hospital, they typically don't deny service to anyone regardless of a prior discharge of debts. But if it's a privately owned doctor, office, clinic, or hospital, they may deny future service to the patients. So that is something that you also want to consider.
And with bankruptcy, you want to be honest. We talk a lot about being honest. But bankruptcy fraud is a real big no-no. And if you forget to put something on there that they later find you have, an asset like a motorcycle or a ski jet even, or a jet ski, which you don't use, but you happen to have, that could be a major problem. And you don't want to have that. Anything that's going to show that you being dishonest in court proceedings will come back to haunt you. And the others involved with the bankruptcy, like ex-wives or ex-husbands, will become part of this as well. So you want yours to be clean. So make sure, if you are filing, that you have gone through all of the previous aspects of things that you can do. You've met, and we do bankruptcy counseling at our office. It is very important that you have a bankruptcy after your debt is done, what you're going to do. And with regard to the medical debt, many of the, as Cindy has said, many of the medical institutions have foundations, and they'll review your case and see if they are able to either reduce it or dismiss it, which will be a big help. It'll help you on your credit overall. So if you don't currently own a house and you want to own one later, you want to have a good credit report. And getting some of those things off your credit report is a real good idea.
And we estimate that when you file bankruptcy, your credit score can decrease as much as 200 points immediately. And it stays on your bankruptcy. It doesn't wipe your credit report clean. A Chapter 7 bankruptcy remains on your credit report for 10 years from the date of filing, and a Chapter 13 stays there for 7 years from the date of discharge. You're also limited to the number of times that you can file. Just for example, if you file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy and you've received a discharge, you have to wait 8 years from the date the Chapter 7 was filed until you can file a Chapter 7 again. And if you want to file a Chapter 13, if you simply want like a court-ordered or supervised debt management plan, that's okay, you can file it. But if you want a discharge after you've filed a 7 and received a discharge and filing a Chapter 13, you have to wait 4 years from the date that Chapter 7 was filed in order to get a benefit. And there are other terms like that, that basically affect you and how often you can or able to file chapter, 7 or 13, either one. So it is something to think about.
The key is being honest with yourself and your family. We have found people don't want their other half to know what credit card debts they have. Now, sometimes there is a reason, because the other person can get very angry about it and then become way unglued. Then again, how they pay for it may be through a source that we wouldn't all consider the best, like pawn shops or payday loans or gambling. And you shouldn't be paying your debt with those sort of new debt.
And what you mentioned about getting advice from a family member, we do tell you to be cautious about seeking advice from family or friends. Just because a person has been able to handle their own finances doesn't mean that he or she will know the best way to handle yours. And a well-meaning friend or relative can give you advice without knowing all the details. Their advice could make your situation even worse.
Let me break down a little bit how a debt management plan works. You would sit down with a counselor and come up with a budget that would fit your daily needs. Now, you would be giving the counselor both income situations, improving that, as well as expense, like, for instance, what your utilities and food, etc. are. So they come up with a regular budget. You also turn into them copies of your most recent credit cards, and they can look at them to see, at those credit cards, to see what kind of payments the companies would agree to. We're bound by that as well. We can't send them 0.5% of balance or 1% of balance. We can't do anything like that. Nobody's going to accept that. So we go according to what the companies will accept. We know by their plans what that is. So we put a number together. Like if you had 6 creditors and each one of them had to have $300 a month. No, it wouldn't be $300. Let's just say the 6 creditors, we would need to pay them $300 a month. Your DMP would be set up for $300 to be paid each month, plus the cost of service, which might be another $50. So $350 would be deposited at our office each month. We would then send to the creditors that $300, and it would get before your due date, get to them before your due date, and then that is when your credit starts building. We pull your credit report when you start a program with us. We pull it at 6 months, and we pull it at a year, and then again at the end. One client came in after he was on the program for 6 months. His credit score had gone up 100 points, and his spouse had gone up 60. He was elated. Well, what had happened is it showed 6 regular payments, the debt going down every month, the interest going down every month. He was improving, and I'm sure by the time he ended his program, his score was higher, and he felt much better about who he was. Before then, it was hit and miss payments all the time, because he would do like a lot of people, and I'm sure many of you. When the money came in, he'd pay money out to whoever he thought needed it. Then when the next money came in, bills would have been there for several, and he didn't have the money for them. So it was hit and miss all the time. A debt management plan allows you to get on track and stay on track. You just make one payment with us, and the date, you have 1 of 2 days in a month you can pick. And we have you choose which one is going to work best with your budget and your income. Isn't that pretty much the way it is, Cindy?
Very much so. And don't confuse a debt management plan with a debt negotiating company. A debt negotiating company, although they do work with your creditors or attempt to reduce the amount of debt that you'll have to pay, they operate totally differently, because what they will do is they will charge you a percentage of the money they save you. And you'll have to pay taxes on the amount of money that is written off on your account. Now, if you don't have a lump sum to send the debt negotiating company, they let you make monthly payments, but they'll hold that money until it's enough to negotiate with one of your creditors. So in the meantime, your creditor's not being paid, your accounts are becoming delinquent, you're incurring additional fees, late charges, interest, and the delinquency is reported to the credit bureau. So, and it's just typically the same with a settlement on your account. That is same thing, depending on the amount of money that's written off by the lender or creditor, you're gonna pay taxes. They'll 1099 you to the IRS. And you know you can't avoid the IRS. So there's something that most lenders really don't look favorably on. And a debt management plan, we will pay your debt in full, but we will not only pay it off faster, but will reduce the amount of the debt itself because of the lower interest rate. So it is a win-win situation doing a debt management plan for yourself.
And we're local. If any lender would have a problem, they can call and talk to the counselor working with the client. A lady contacted me a few weeks ago, and they sent $5,000 out of state to one of these companies that was going to negotiate with the creditors. The creditors never got a dime, and they had to file bankruptcy. So before you involve yourself with any kind of an out-of-state firm, call our office, talk to a counselor, make sure that it's legitimate, make sure that's something that we can't do something to help you instead. Because it is so important that you keep control of your finances. And most people who are having debt problems don't have thousands of dollars sitting around to send somebody so they can hold on to it, so that they can someday send it to a creditor.
And it's the same exact thing, Karen, with a mortgage. I've had clients come in and tell me that they sent a third-party company that guaranteed them a workout option, thousands of dollars. And these companies cannot guarantee anything. It is entirely up to the lender and the investor whose money's at risk on your loan. So you're basically throwing your money away. And this person got nothing for her money that she sent to them. They cannot guarantee a modification. And anybody that tells you that is actually lying to you. And secondly, basically you never have to pay for a workout option through any mortgage company. And obviously we're not charging, our counseling is paid for by grants and donations from the community. So there is virtually no charge for you to come in to talk to us about a problem with your mortgage.
The HUD in particular requires that you bring all the backup documentation. And I would mention that one more time. You need to bring copies of your check stubs. You need to bring your original foreclosure papers on your mortgage, any other mortgage papers that you have, tax returns for the last 2 years,
Pay stubs.
Those things that can verify for the lender what your income is, and then the counselor will sit down and figure out the expenses and help the lender understand what kind of an amount you could agree to. And that takes us back to the original mortgage. Maybe your mortgage was set up with too high a payment, done as a quick mortgage to get the house sold, and never should have been that high. I don't know if lenders even look at things like that, but that could be the problem. Then you may be faced with sell or let them foreclose, whatever. A foreclosure on your record is always hard. It's hard to accept personally, but it's very hard on your credit record as well. But those things do happen. A few years ago when we had the flooding, many people lost homes because they couldn't keep the payments up and there was nobody, I mean nobody, to help them out. So ask questions, contact a credit counselor, see what you can do to get these answers and whether they are about housing. As far as getting a home equity loan, that is possible, but you must understand a home equity loan is either a second mortgage on your house or a mortgage that must be paid off before your house can be sold. So it is new debt to repay old. Now this does work if you're disciplined. That takes us back to that nice big D word, disciplined, so that you pay that off. Today's lenders usually require that to come directly from your checking account or savings account, which could be just fine, but it does need to get paid off. You would take a home equity loan if your interest rate was considerably lower and if it grouped a bunch of credit card payments as into one. But you can't go get new credit cards, and those folks will be right there to send you new credit cards just as soon as this other debt was paid off.
But at a much higher interest rate.
Yes.
And you gotta remember, our job is not to tell you whether or not you can file. That is up to you. The only thing that we try to do is to let you know if there's any other alternatives to filing, and then give you some additional information about the bankruptcy process.
Yes, we're an information highway, only a credit. So we are here to help you make some of those decisions. It's going to be you that either follows the budget or throws it away. It's going to be you who either sets a good record with your creditors or not a good credit record. And we're just the ones that you use in order to get that information.
But I like to tell our clients too that once they have an appointment with us, they establish a relationship with us, and we will be there to help them throughout until they're financially stable.
Yes, there have been many good instances of that over the year, and people are so happy when they resolve what to do and then follow it through. A lady told me that she had given the excuse to her friends when they wanted to go out for the evening. She said, I just told him my counselor won't let me spend the money on that. I said, that's fine and dandy, just go ahead and blame me. The point is it stays in your budget and is used for something you need.
Very good.
Another lady told me after we had this kind of conversation, and she said, how did you know I was always the last one in the bar at closing time with money for another round? I said, well, I just figured. So see, you make sure you don't have that extra money with you. You make sure you're able to do the things you need, and if you're having fun, you cut it short. So anyway, stop over at our office, 1003 West 4th Street in Waterloo. Give us a call, 234-0661, and we will set up an appointment for you. There's no cost to the counseling. Come in and meet with us, and you can meet with a counselor and determine what you feel you should do. Bring what you feel is necessary. We ask that you write your bills down. Credit cards, you can bring those last statements. But bring them in. We will sit and talk to you about your debt and give you some relief from the stress you're feeling. This is very bad for your health, physical, mental, emotional, when your money is not in line. Many times you can worry about something that you don't even have to. And sitting down and talking to a counselor will help you to understand whether or not you should worry or whether or not you should act. And you will also find you got two people in a household, you got two opinions. We want to get them together, and we want to make you more knowledgeable about your money and your other half more knowledgeable about the financial aspect of your house. So you have a good week, good day now, and we will be talking to you later. Take care.
We did some good information.
Support from members like you help KBBG FM continue to communicate, to educate. Keep it anchored right here at 88.1.
I think we need to have like Lindsay or Susan or Tammy even give us a call while we're here.
They won't do it, I think what they do.
I have to ask you to, like, actually, you have to stop at least 1 minute before, okay? It gets cut off. They don't hear it,
Yeah.
you know?